Federal workers really hated Elon Musk asking them to explain what they accomplished last week. I don't quite understand it. I love bragging about what I do at work to my boss, but they didn't have time to respond to the email, but they did have time to sit on CNN and about it. Take a look at this.
First, just tell us about this email and what it was like receiving it and what you all have talked about after getting it.
Sure. I got this email Saturday afternoon, about 3 p.m., and I felt absolutely infuriated getting this email with a demand within 48 hours to provide a response on what I did within the last week or face termination. This is clearly an attempt from Elon Musk to harass and bully and intimidate the federal workforce, which is part of his broader plan to gut the federal workforce and privatize public sector services to ensure that corporations like his own can get more profit. And that makes me really angry, and my coworkers as well.
All right, Uptalker, let me explain something to you. In the time it took you to rant about Elon Musk and new management and new ownership there at the top at the federal government, you could have written 2 of your 5 bullet points. That is unless, of course, you didn't accomplish anything last week. This is so standard. Listen, I have sympathy for the individual, not her, but I have the sympathy for certain individuals who are working in the federal government who are facing termination right now. I don't like it when anybody loses a job, but here's the thing. I don't remember Breonna Keeler doing a big segment like this when people lost their job during the COVID pandemic because things got shut down. I don't remember her doing this segment for federal workers who were threatened with getting fired by Joe Biden if they didn't get the shot. Right? How many federal workers lost their jobs because they wouldn't get the COVID shot? Because Joe Biden was the bad guy, but now they're trying to make Elon Musk the bad guy because he's merely asking you to open your email and reply. And she has to understand, and I hope all the other federal employees understand, your tears are falling on deaf ears here, okay? Everybody in the private sector, everybody in the corporate world at one time or another, often on a regular basis, has to prove to their employer that they're bringing it, that they're getting something done. This is so standard in the corporate world, especially when there's new management or new ownership. We're the ownership, we're the taxpayer. But we hired a new CEO. His name is Donald Trump, and we hired him to fix the waste, fraud, and abuse and make the government work more efficiently. It's just like when a board hires a new CEO to cut the fat of a corporation and make it run better. And oftentimes that new CEO comes in with his new management and upper management, that would be the cabinet secretaries, and they hire an efficiency expert, that would be Elon Musk, and say, all right, let's get a handle on this, figure out what everybody's doing, who they report to, what they're accomplishing, what their role is, and let's see where we can make things more efficient. And that's the email that you just got. And the fact that you think that it's, in some way offensive and insulting for you to write down 5 things about what you do and how you accomplish it. If my boss asked me to do that, I'd give him 10 things. And then I give him 10 more ideas about how other people aren't pulling their weight and we could actually run better and more efficiently around here. And here's my ideas on how things could be better. And by the way, if you promote me and give me a raise, I'll make things better here. That's how normal people respond to management asking them about what they've accomplished. They actually prove how essential they are. And the fact that that lady isn't tells you something. But Ana Navarro tried to take up their cause, and then she ran into a buzzsaw named Scott Jennings.
Abusive of federal workers, and it is just plain wrong.
And it's random.
It's abusive.
It's random.
It's abusive.
Yes,
to get an email?
I do. I do think that. I think the way that they are. Yeah, I think the way that they are treating them.
Why? How is this abusive?
Scott, have you ever gotten an email from someone that said, you better do this or else you're going to resign?
Yeah, it's called having a boss in the private
sector. From someone who's not your boss?
The White House is every federal worker's boss. That's number one.
Elon Musk is not anybody's boss.
Scott, how is Elon going to evaluate? I mean, how is he going to evaluate the work of thousands of federal employees when he has no idea what they do?
He's not. The test was, are you even paying attention to your email? Are you even at your terminal?
Some federal workers, he sent it on a weekend. Some federal workers do not have access to their emails on the weekends. They just don't.
Did they go to work today? I mean, look, the amount of outrage, melting down, and sort of outpouring of emotion over this ought to tell you everything you need to know. We had a lady on CNN today, a supposed federal worker, who said she was infuriated by getting this email. She had time to go on CNN, but she didn't have time to send a 30-second email saying, well, here's what I was working on last week. This is what people in the private sector have come to hate about how they view the public sector. And I think there's a great many very dedicated public servants. But you said, it's about control. Yes, it's about control, and it's about finding out who is actually at their job working and who isn't, and do we need all these people?
That's exactly what this is about. And it's okay if it's about control, because guess what? We just hired these guys to be in control. The government workers and the government agencies are not supposed to be in control of the federal government. The head of the executive branch is supposed to be in control, and he should be able to run it as efficiently as he can. But for some reason, the Democrats have decided to draw the line on this. They hate DOGE, and they've erected DAGE. DAGE is Democrats Against Government Efficiency. They've isolated Elon Musk. They think that going after him personally is a great way to go. Let's try to divide him and Trump, and let's get them warring. It's not working, not in any way whatsoever. But they're going to continue to die on this hill because this is where their power is. So enter Hakeem Jeffries into the MSNBC echo chamber to raise the ante on this. This isn't just about the civil service. It's not just about the government and its services and helping the American people. No, this is civil war.
To hear from you that you understand the scale of the threat and you have ideas about how to interrupt what feels like something that we have not experienced since the Civil War in terms of the threat to our republic.
Well, it's certainly the case that we understand the scale of the threat. That can't be doubted. The CBC, which I'm a part of, definitively understands the scale of the threat. Our communities have been under siege, as you pointed out, since before the Civil War. I'm a direct descendant of those very communities, so we understand the struggle, the history, the strength of people like John Lewis, which we're going to channel. That's my experience.
What does this have to do with slavery? No, I'm serious. What does this have to do with slavery? I'm a pretty smart guy. I'm pretty quick. I understand these things. What are they talking about, the Civil War and slavery? And then he jumps to John Lewis and the civil rights struggle. And it's, why is this suddenly a racial thing? I'm sorry, is Elon Musk just firing Black and Hispanic and Asian federal workers? Oh, no. That's right. That's MSNBC and NBC News. That's what they're doing over there. So maybe it's just hard for them to kick the habit. What?
That's my personal experience. That's my family's experience. And so we understand that. And as a caucus, it's definitively the case that we understand that. Listen, we launched a rapid response task force and litigation working group. It's going to be led by Joe Neguse and, of course, a brilliant constitutional lawyer, Jamie Raskin, to be able to respond to and work with our allies like Tish James and others in part of what we are responding to. Listen, Elon Musk and Donald Trump, they're flooding the zone in part to create distress, to create a sense of invincibility and inevitability.
Yeah, well, because that's what winning an election is all about. I remember when Barack Obama used to say that, we won, you lost. Elections have consequences. All of this, it's historic. It's the worst thing since the Civil War. Bill Clinton and Al Gore had a thing called reinventing government, where they came in and they bragged about how they were cutting the federal workforce and they were making it more efficient and they consolidated things. George Herbert Walker Bush, after the Cold War and after the Berlin Wall fell down, they did a whole process of reevaluating the Pentagon and making the military and the contractors that work with the military more efficient. That was before 9/11, of course. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, look it up, in 1932 ran on a platform of cutting the federal government by 25%, consolidating agencies, and yes, making government more efficient. In 1932, there's nothing new here. This is what politicians have been promising to do for decades. They just win the election then and not do anything about it. This one's doing something about it. And by the way, you don't even have to go all the way back to FDR. You can go right back to the Biden administration. Well, of course, they didn't cut federal jobs. No, their policies killed private sector jobs. See, it's funny. You hear from somebody that works at the EPA really upset that they're going to lose their job now. But that person at the EPA could very well have been responsible for a coal miner losing their job, or somebody in the automotive industry in Detroit losing their job because of unconstitutional regulations mandated by the EPA. So we're all weeping and they're all wringing their hands and they're having all of these cable news segments about the EPA guy, but they never said anything about the coal miner and they never said anything about the automotive worker. In fact, when Jen Psaki was asked about some of these jobs that were being eliminated because of this overreaching, illegal regulations brought on by the administrative state. Here's what Jen Psaki had to say.
When is it that the Biden administration is going to let the thousands of fossil fuel industry workers, whether it's pipeline workers or construction workers, who are either out of work or will soon be out of work because of a Biden EO, when it is and where it is that they can go for their green job? And that is something the administration has promised. There is now a gap. So I'm just curious when that happens, when those people can count on that.
Well, I'd certainly welcome you to present your data of all the thousands and thousands of people who won't be getting a green job. Maybe next time you're here, you can present that.
But you said that they would be getting green jobs, so I'm just asking when that happens. Richard Trumka, who is a friend, longtime friend of Joe Biden, says about that day one Keystone EO, he says, I wish he, the president, had paired that more carefully with the thing that he did second by saying, here's where we are creating the jobs. So there's partial evidence from Richard Trumka.
Well, you didn't include all of his interview. Would you like to include the rest?
So how about this? The Laborers International Union of North America said the Keystone decision will cost 1,000 existing union jobs and 10,000 projected construction jobs.
Well, what Mr. Trumka also indicated in the same interview was that President Biden has proposed a climate plan with transformative investments in infrastructure and laid out a plan that will not only create millions of good union jobs, but also help tackle the climate crisis. And as the president has indicated when he gave his primetime address to talk about the American Rescue Plan, he talked about his plans to also put forward a jobs plan in the weeks or months following. And he has every plan to do exactly that.
And she didn't care. She was snarky. She was obnoxious. She was rude. And she was acting like there was no evidence that people lost jobs. Of course, people lost jobs. And no, the green jobs never materialized, ever. Although, one good news, she got a job. She got to leave that position at the podium as the press secretary for the White House and transition immediately to the anchor desk reading a teleprompter for a news outlet. Joe Biden himself used to use the learn to code language during the Obama administration when people lost jobs. In fact, he would brag about it. Here's one of those town halls where good old Joe really related in that personable, warm, and communicative way with people there who had just lost work. You miss this guy, don't you?
I come from a family where in an area where it's coal mining in Scranton. Anybody who could go down 300 to 3,000 feet in the mine, sure and hell can learn how to program as well. But we don't think of it that way. Even my liberal friends don't. The president asked me to get Detroit out of its problems. Remember Detroit went bankrupt? And he gave me authority to do whatever I needed to do. So I set up with all the agencies, what is all the money out there Detroit could qualify for they didn't ask for. They didn't know how to get it. Didn't know how to get it. The end result was, not just because of me, but because of the team I put together, Detroit got out of bankruptcy, started to come back. We were able to provide everything from street lighting for them that they didn't know they could have, and to inner city rail, that because 60% of the people had jobs out of town, but only 60%, the people had jobs out of town, where most of them are now, manufacturing jobs, didn't have vehicles to be able to get to work. So we put in a rail system. Anyway, make a long story short, things really started to move. And then we found out something interesting. Everybody, when things hit, went bankrupt, everybody who had any talent in terms of technology left. Black, white, Hispanic, man, women. We didn't have anybody, not a joke, who could turn on the streetlights. You hear me? Not a joke. No one who knew how to turn on the sewer system, because it requires computer capability and programming capability. And so we went out and hired this outfit that the major corporations hire when they need IT. They went out into the neighborhoods. They found 54, happened to be all women, not by intention, mostly women of color with a few exceptions, ages 24 to 52 or 4. They went through a 19-week training program at the community college there, learning how to program. And I remember telling people this, and my liberal friends were saying, you can't expect them to be able to do that. Give me a break.
I think that's my favorite part of that little moment where he he relays that the liberal friends of his said, you can't expect those people to do that, those people being women of color, to learn how to program. So there you go. Just learn how to code, learn how to program. Here's Joe Biden bragging about it. Sure, you lost your job in the automotive industry. Learn to code and you'll be able to turn the sewer on because no one else was capable of doing it. It's amazing how the media covers these stories differently, isn't it? And when it's a federal worker who's lost their job for the first time in history, it appears, suddenly it's like the Civil War. But when you, in your private sector job, had to be canned because you didn't want to get the shot or because of regulations brought on by the federal government that kills your job, or maybe you're just in a competitive environment and you got to excel and really, sort of prove your worth if you want to keep your job, well, there's no special panel discussions for you. It's almost like there's a double standard with the media. It's almost like there's a double standard in Washington, D.C.